So that way you can hear all the great speeches. We're going to kick off in
Go up
here
front
in
with
just a
her or
second.
no? Right by here. You wanted us to scooch in. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'll keep an eye on it, so I don't have to hold it.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Elizabethtown Airport. I'm Matt Deneen. I'm looking forward to the privilege of introducing Rand Paul. Please give him a big round of applause and welcome him to Elizabethtown. Now, before he comes up here and takes the mic, I want to say a few things about the man and why I stand with Rand. You know, Rand has consistently stood his ground. He's pushed back against the Biden policies of inflationary policies and reckless spending. Rand Paul has stood his ground. When it has come time to defend our liberties, our freedom of religion, our freedom of speech, and to push back against government overreach, Rand Paul has stood his ground. Yeah. When it has come time to push back against the fallacies of Dr. Fauci, Rand Paul has stood his ground.
Lock him up.
When it comes time to defending our liberties, there's no better man than Rand. Yeah. Now he has an opponent, and I can't wait for 1 week from today. His opponent and the rest of the nation is going to know where Kentucky stands. And Kentucky stands with Rand. I'm excited to be up here as your next senator from the 10th district right here in Elizabethtown and all of Hardin County. And I'm looking forward to working closely with Rand Paul to defend our liberties and defend our Constitution. It's my honor to introduce the next speaker. Your U.S. Congressman and our U.S. Congressman, Rick Dudley.
Thank you. Wow, what a great senator you're going to have. That's just fantastic. Thanks for Randy Kelly for allowing me just a couple of minutes to be here to introduce our senator. It's a great privilege to be here, and I will tell you one thing. The House is going to flip on November the 8th. The only question, no matter what headline you see, the only question is how big is the majority going to be? And it's going to be big, and we're going to make a difference for this country. And I will tell you, as we looked at Senator Paul, we have not had Dr. Fauci before the House the entire 2 years because the other side of the aisle controls the gavel and the agenda. Well, the gavels are going to change, the agendas are going to change, and Americans are going to get the information they need and want. And the reason we're going to win, the Democrats have made it about abortion to the 9th month. That's what their campaign has been about. The political party's main objective is abortion to the 9th month. And the American people don't want that. Now they're walking around going, where's your plan to clean up our mess? Well, we have a plan. We want a country that's safe. We're going to control the border, work on fentanyl. We want a country that's growing economically. We're going to unleash America's energy potential to get back to it. We want a future of freedom, and we're going to make sure we have the right to go to the doctor of your choice. And we want a government that's accountable. So Dr. Fauci may retire, but we're going to invite him to come before the House of Representatives. So we have to go. The biggest challenge, I always joke, Senator Paul and I both live in Bowling Green. We've had kids play Little League together. We've been rivals, and we've been on the same side, and we've been rivals. And the one thing we're going to rival over, he may be chair of healthcare. I'll be chair in the House of Healthcare. We may have a fight over who gets Dr. Fauci first. We may take control. But it's not just because of his personality. It's because people deserve the answers for why it came out of Wuhan lab. We know it came from Wuhan lab. Why do they hide that it came out of Wuhan lab? What investment do we have in there? That's what we want to find out. The American people have the right to know, and you have the right to hold your government accountable. And no one on the Senate side, I'll tell you, on the House side, stands for you more than Rand Paul, who stands there making sure that your dollars are spent wisely, the government is accountable for what it does, and protects your freedom. And I want to work just as hard with him to protect your freedom. But today, it's about we stand with the best senator in the United States Senate, our great friend, Rand Paul.
Come Tuesday, there's a red wave coming. Are you ready? For the first time in the history of Kentucky, we now have more registered Republicans than Democrats. And I would disagree slightly with what Brett. I don't think it's who gets Fauci first. I think we're going to get all together. We're going to get him at least under deposition,
Lock 'em up.
under oath, and then we'll bring him back. But
Get
my
them.
goal is hopefully that we do it all together, because I think we may only get one time out of it.
That's right.
To me, it's not about Fauci going to jail, although that probably would be appropriate.
Heck yeah.
It is about finding the truth of the origins of the virus so this doesn't happen again.
I want a refund.
There is a mountain of evidence saying it came from the lab, and there's not a scintilla of evidence saying it didn't.
And murdered all those
The
kids.
scientists who say, oh, it came from animals. They tested 80,000 animals in the Wuhan market, and none of them had COVID. They tested the people who worked in the market in Wuhan. None of them had antibodies to it. All of the evidence points towards it coming from a lab. Immediately, within days of finding it out, all of Fauci's advisors told him privately they thought it came from a lab. They looked like it was manipulated. 2 days later, he has a meeting, which has all been redacted. They won't tell us what happened at the meeting, but everyone came out of the meeting 100% convinced that you were a conspiracy theorist if you thought it came from the lab. They changed 180 degrees with one meeting with Fauci, and several of them got multi-million-dollar grants a few months later. Fauci has been dissembling, dishonest,
Since the
deceitful from the very beginning. He has resisted every inquiry. He and his wife make $860,000 between the two of them. They're civil servants, and they make $860,000. And I ask him this question: is anybody on the committee that approves the vaccines receiving money from the people who make the vaccines? And his response: none of my business. He says there's a law that says I do not have to tell you, and I will not tell you this. Through Freedom of Information, we discovered that 1,800 scientists at the NIH have received $193 million over a period of several years, but they won't tell us which scientist and which company. Do you think that if someone were running for school board locally and they owned a textbook company and they were elected, that you would allow them to vote a contract to their textbook company without divulging that they own the textbook company? This is what we're facing here. But realize he's never divulged anything. They work for us. He's a bureaucrat. He's supposed to respond to us. It's my job to ask him questions for you. And the gall and the arrogance of him to say to the American people, it's none of our business. But it's worse than that. At every turn, he has done things that we know are incorrect and unscientific. In a recent hearing, I said, Dr. Fauci, I'd like you to meet a friend of mine, Dr. Fauci from 2004. Meet Dr. Fauci from 2022. The Democrats told me I couldn't use any video, so of course I did.
Thank you.
So what we did is we put an iPad up there very quickly, turned the microphone to it, and pushed play without saying anything. So by the time they could complain, it was already over. But in the little vignette, Dr. Fauci of 2004 says to a woman who calls C-SPAN and says, my daughter's had the flu, she's been very sick, does she now need to get the flu shot? He said, of course not. He was very certain. He said an infection is better than any vaccine. It's nature's way of inoculating you. He was very certain of it. But when I brought it up again, he muttered, he went back and forth, and then what he finally said was, well, you know, I wrote the chapter on immunology. And I said, well, you need to reread the chapter on immunology because you used to understand what naturally acquired immunity was. Why is this important? Is it just an esoteric debate? No. Some of you have been vaccinated. You need to know, are you going to be vaccinated again? You may have had 2, you could have had 4, you might have had 0.
None.
And you need to know, do you need a vaccine? Well, if you've been infected, what does that mean? They won't tell you the truth about it. But they did reveal one study, only one that I'm aware of. It was 1 million people, so it was a lot of people. And they found that if you've been infected but not vaccinated, that you're 57 times less likely to go to the hospital from COVID. Because you've gained immunity. But even if you're in between on it, like I say, what if you're 75 years old and you've had 2 or you've had 3? Do you need 4, 5, and 6, and 7, and 8, 9? the most recent vaccine they're telling you to get, they didn't test on any humans. They tested it on 8 mice, and they didn't even prove that the mice wouldn't get COVID. They proved that the mice make antibodies. And so I asked Dr. Fauci, I said, look, if you put the kids forward and you give them 100 vaccines, they will make an antibody every time you give them vaccines. That doesn't mean they need it. Almost all of our kids have had COVID. The thing is the original COVID, which was more dangerous in 2020, the death rate was 1 in 2 million for children under 18, and almost all of those, sadly, were dying of another disease. We haven't counted the disease. Everybody's like, oh, America's so terrible. Look at all the disease we have compared to other countries. We count it differently. We paid the doctors and hospitals extra money to report deaths. We didn't say it had to be the primary cause. And I'm not here to say people didn't die. I know people who died from COVID. I know at least 3 people pretty well who died, including a doctor in Bowling Green. So I'm not saying it's not real. It was real and is real. But did you ever hear Dr. Fauci tell you what you could do if you got sick? No, they want to malign you and tell you you're a horrible person if you weren't vaccinated. There was a broadcaster in Nashville, a conservative talk show host, who died. He wasn't vaccinated, and the whole left jumped on him. It's the hatred is just amazing that comes from these people. But I'll tell you this, never again. No more lockdown. They closed every school in America, and no child was yet sick. Now, everybody here has common sense. When you have the seasonal flu here in town, if 5 or 10 kids have it in a class, they'll close the school for a couple days. That makes sense. We closed every school in America and across most of the world with no children sick. And then we left them closed for months and months, into years. And the recent scores came out, and the kids have lost more ground than they've ever lost. And who lost the most? The poorest kids among us, the ones that have more trouble and don't have as unified a family to take care of them, or their parents have to work and can't teach them. Turns out, actually, teachers are important. But teachers are important if they're in the classroom teaching our kids.
That's right.
School's actually a stabilizing force. Some kids don't have much stability in their family. School is a stabilizing force for them. But we can't just have this ridiculous notion that we not have schools. I told Dr. Fauci this in June of 2020. I put up 8 to 10 charts of all over the world, people back in school. In Sweden, they kept schools open the whole time. They didn't wear masks, and how many children died? 0. People said, well, all the teachers died then, right? They measured the rate of disease in the teachers, and they had no higher incidence than any other employment in the country. So the thing is, they haven't been honest with us. They overreacted. And now if you hear them, Dr. Fauci, of course he's on TV everywhere, he says, I never told him to close down the schools. Yeah. What a lying sack of you-know-what. I mean, here's the thing. We can't let them close our schools down, but it was worse than that. Your governor sent agents of the government to a church on Easter Sunday to take our license plates. Never again can we let them take our freedom. I read a story yesterday about people who were in the hospital during COVID. People who were dying, not just from COVID, but dying as we get older from other diseases. The sadness of not allowing your family to be there with you. One particular story was a woman, her whole family got COVID. She wasn't that old, she was thin, and she ended up getting sicker and sicker. Her family all got it recovered. They wouldn't let her family be with her in the hospital. She ended up dying alone in the hospital. How sad is that? But think of just the older people who were dying, and you want to be there with your parents and grandparents, or in a nursing home. They didn't let us do
early
it.
treatment.
So here's the ridiculous replacement for the human touch, according to Anthony Fauci. It's a latex glove filled with warm water they put on your hand, and that's supposed to comfort you. Never again. These people need to leave us the hell alone and stay out of And so then they felt bad, and they passed out free money to everyone, $1,400 checks. And guess what? Went in your gas tank and it's gone. It's caused the money to lose its value. Money supply went up 15% a year. Your prices are going up dramatically. And the people paying the worst price for this are the people the Democrats say they want to help, the working class, senior citizens. Anybody lost a little money in your savings account lately? The Democrats couldn't run a 7-Eleven, and they shouldn't be in charge of the country.
Great.
When we win, I promise you this, I will subpoena every last scrap of paper. When we win, it's important to know why we win and what we stand for. We are the party that doesn't believe in the concentration of power. We are the party that believes in the dissipation of power. We are the party that believes in the checks and balances. We are the party that believes in the 10th Amendment, that the powers not granted to the federal government are left to the state and to the people respectively. We are that party who believes that our rights come from our Creator, that government was formed among men to protect those rights, not to give you a cell phone, or free college, or free this or that,
French fries.
because there is no free lunch. Our job is to defend your liberty.
Up in New
On
York.
Tuesday when we win, we will win because we want the power to be given back to the people. We don't want to lord it over Democrats. We want to give power back. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, we're going to grab a quick picture. We're getting a picture of all the crowds at every stop. So if you don't mind coming up here, getting
Let's
ready.
just leave them here. And we gotta get this way.
Play-